let's take a step back and think big picture about the business. You compete not only with other phone companies, you compete with cable TV companies, because you offer TV service and wired data service. You even compete through your directories with the local newspaper and Google and anybody else who sells advertising. So as Peter Drucker would say, what business are you in?
We're in the connectivity business. I mean, we like to say that we connect people to their world. That is basically what we do. And so our objective is to make sure that you're connected to your business information needs, to your home entertainment information needs, to your family, to your associates, that the machines that you possess that transmit data, that they're connected to other machines that are important. And if you think about this, we have this really terrific world-class global network. Hanging off of that network are well over 1 billion devices that are basically allowing you to connect with data and machines and whatnot. That includes ATMs and gas pumps and so forth. So we're in the business of connecting people to information and data.
Okay. So in that world where the long-predicted convergence has come, everything digital is becoming one thing, what factors will determine who wins and who loses?
This is really important. I like to tell people that the more mobile people become, and our objective, by the way, is to mobilize everything that you do. Whatever your connectivity needs are, I want those needs mobilized. And the more mobile, the more wireless you become, the more wireline-centric we become. You think about here in New York City. What has been the biggest obstacle to getting the bandwidth required for this kind of iPhone penetration in a city like this? Spectrum is important, but the number one issue is getting fiber now to these cell sites. Running fiber, getting fiber to the cell sites, that's where the bottleneck is right now for a lot of this. And so as you get more and more penetration, what do you need? More and more cell sites. But those cell sites need more and more fiber. And in fact, the cell sites are getting smaller and smaller, which means more and more fiber. And how small are they getting? The newest technology we're deploying that people love, by the way, is your own, it looks like a wireless router for broadband in your home, but it's a wireless antenna in your home. Call it a femtocell. And what's that femtocell do? It connects to your broadband in your home. So the more wireless you become, the more wireline-centric we as a company become to deliver this kind of bandwidth. The companies that will win are the companies that can do it all, that can bring the wireless, have the spectrum position, the capabilities of wireless, as well as the fixed line infrastructure to deliver this kind of traffic.
So what's the constraint? Is it the actual supply of fiber available? Is it the ability to finance a tremendous amount of capital spending, or is it something else?
There's a short-term constraint, and that is it's just literally people down in manholes, people digging trenches, people deploying fiber into the cell sites, the homes, and whatnot. That's a short-term constraint. The long-term constraint is in wireless, where does the bandwidth come from? It's airwaves, it's spectrum. And there's a limited supply of this spectrum. In fact, one of the first things I did when I took this job was went and pursued a company called Aloha Communications. And it was a little company, a good friend of mine that lives down in Austin, Texas. You and I were talking Austin. He and a bunch of his friends over the years had assembled a big footprint of 700 megahertz spectrum, which is really, really rich spectrum. This is really, really good stuff, all right? And it's the kind of stuff that if you're transmitting in this spectrum, you penetrate walls, you can go down into basements and subways and so forth. His company had done nothing but accumulate a big footprint of this spectrum. We bought his company, paid $2 billion for this spectrum 2 years ago, maybe close to 3 now, for spectrum that we knew we would not be able to deploy for probably 4 years. And then year before last, we entered the FCC auction to buy even more of this spectrum. And so within a couple of years, we spent $9 billion on airwaves. All right? You want to talk about fun, go to your board and say, I want to spend $9 billion on air, which is effectively what we did. But we now have spent this $9 billion. We're working to get the technology ready to deploy because this 40 to 60 times, we're going to need that spectrum. That's the biggest constraint today. And by the way, we have line of sight to exhausting that spectrum.
Right.
So there's going to have to be a continual, perpetual effort by our U.S. government to continue to look for ways to free up more spectrum.